Welcome to the Past People, where I will talk about the people of the past. Please comment, like and subscribe if you wish for more stories, and leave your suggestions below and I will endeavour to cover them. Hanna Skeffington, born 24th of May 1877, was one of Ireland's most passionate promoters of women's rights. She was an influential figure during the Suffragette movement, systematically campaigning for the equal status of men and women in Ireland. Skeffington was exposed to the Republican troubles from a young age. Her father was involved in the Irish Republican Brotherhood before going on to become an MP. During his time in politics, he had repeatedly voted against all female suffrage bills. This only fueled her passion further and highlighted how suppressed women's social movements are. She disagreed with her father's views. However, being surrounded by political thinkers as a child helped shape her own political future. Throughout her political career, she fought many avenues for national freedom and women's rights. She was responsible for founding the Irish Women's Franchise League in 1908 with her husband, Francis, Margaret Cousins and James Cousins. This militant suffrage group then grew to an initial 12 founding members, and thereafter the IWFL grew further to become one of the largest and most profound suffrage groups that existed in the early 20th century. The group fought against the lack of Irish independence and the exclusion of women from the voting process, as well as the absence of women's rights in general. Skeffington subsequently became one of the founding members of the Irish Women's Workers' Union in 1911, an independent branch of the Irish Transport and General Workers' Union. Frances and Hannah owned a newspaper called the Irish Citizen, giving her the opportunity to use her writing skills to distribute her political passions. She wrote articles regarding the lives of Irish women and attempted to inspire the general population into viewing gender roles differently. Skeffington was not afraid to go against the grain alongside many other women. She was often involved in physical altercations with police and the public to bring awareness in favour of women's rights. On the 13th of June 1912, Hannah, along with 7 other women, including Margaret Palmer, Jane and Margaret Murphy, took part in the smashing of several windows of Dublin Castle. This was in retaliation to women being excluded from the franchise of the Third Home Rule Bill. Being involved in this protest against male rule in Ireland resulted in Hannah losing her job as a teacher. This was the consequence for many women during the suffrage movement and a risk that they were willing to take to fight for women's freedom. On the 20th of June, she was convicted along with her fellow friends. They served a month-long sentence in Mountjoy prison. During their sentencing, they refused to admit guilt for their actions through refusing to pay a fine. They were consequently forced to serve an additional month in prison. This would not be the last time that Skeffington would be arrested and serve time in prison. In November 1913, Skeffington tried to give leaflets to the Conservative leader, Bonar Law, and the Ulster Unionist leader, Sir Edward Carson. She was arrested for assaulting a police officer and was sent to Mountjoy yet again. During this stay, she went on a hunger strike for 5 days until her release. In August 1918, she was once again arrested on Westmoreland Street. She was taken to Bridewell Jail and then Holloway Jail, where she went on hunger strike. Her frequent trips to prison did not go to waste, as they only encouraged her political passions further. This no doubt drove her to establish the Women's Prisoners Defence League alongside Maud Gonne and Charlotte Despard. They campaigned and fundraised for over 7,000 Republicans who were imprisoned as a consequence of the Irish Civil War. 8 years later, in 1926, the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom held its annual conference. Skeffington attended along with 21 other Irish delegates, and the head of the organisation, Jane Addams praised the bravery of Frances Skeffington, for which Hanna was grateful. Her work did not stop there. In January 1933, she entered Northern Ireland to speak on behalf of the female Republican prisoners being held in Armagh Jail. She had been banned from entering Northern Ireland due to her political record and again arrested and held for 15 days. Still not deterred from the cause, in 1935 she spoke out against the Conditions of Employment Bill on behalf of the Women Graduates Association, which was set to restrict the opportunities of employment for women. 2 years later, in 1937, she became a founding member of the Women's Social and Progressive League, whose goal was to inform women of the consequences of the anti-women legislation, which was being attempted to pass through. Although the constitutions often fell short of her visions for the full gender equality, Skeffington considered the Easter Rising Rebellion the first time in Irish history where both the struggle for women's citizenship and national freedom coincided. Women were also involved in the Republican to fight for independence from Britain. She hoped this would shift the public view of gender roles. While she was a dedicated Republican committed to obtaining national freedom, this was never at the expense of the fight for women's rights. Skeffington had first-hand experience of the neglect of women within social movements, worked to include gender equality in the future of an Irish independent state. She was willing to push the boundaries of what were considered socially acceptable forms of defiance, while also contributing immensely to progressive organisations such as the IWWU. Skeffington should be remembered as a remarkable thinker and a pioneering force for the cause of women's rights in Ireland. Please comment, like and subscribe if you wish for more stories, and leave your suggestions below and I will endeavour to cover them.